Hey everyone, welcome back to another weekly hardware news recap. We have three big items this week. One of them is some new Intel leaks that were sent to Gamers Nexus. We'll talk about those in a moment. We have some information on AMD Vega 64 AIB partner cards. This stems from a Tom's Hardware DE story, but we've gone and validated some of the information in that story. And then finally, some information on Zen 2, aka Matisse. So we'll be talking about that, and then some memory items later on in the video. Before that, this coverage is brought to you by the Core G21 enclosure from Thermaltake, a $70 case with two 4mm thick tempered glass side panels and a power supply shroud with top-mounted SSD sleds. Learn more at the link in the description below. The first news item is the Intel document that was sent to GN. So we received an Intel launch update document, or ILU, from a source connected to one of the suppliers in the industry, and the document contains some information pertaining to Coffee Lake and Pentium CPUs, as well as Celeron CPUs later on. It's got some additional information on the roadmap into 2018 for chipsets and other launches. And a quick note here, because Intel color codes the documents by supplier, we have removed some of the color-coded elements and obfuscated the colors. So it's not the original color of the document, but we've confirmed the document with other sources in the industry. So confirmed its legitimacy through others that I know. Many of them, however, did suggest that Intel's roadmap at this point changes almost monthly. So even though this is an accurate, actual leak, it still might change, just based on what we're being told. Intel apparently has moved things around a lot because of various AMD launches and then some of their own stuff internally. So keep that in mind. Of immediate interest to our audience, we learned that Intel plans to launch Pentium Silver and Celeron Gemini Lake CPUs in 4 and 2 core 10-watt SoC variants in October and November. These look like they'll be BGA, but they follow the known Coffee Lake launch, where we already have all those specs anyway. The company aims to follow Z370 with launches of its H370, H310, and B360 chipsets in the first quarter of 2018. And these launches will be accompanied by other Coffee Lake CPUs from the 8th generation. That includes additional 6, 4, and 2 core CPUs, again from Coffee Lake S. Intel aims to launch Q370 and Q360 business chipsets in second quarter of 2018. And we also know that Intel is launching its Optane 900p SSD at or near CitizenCon, the event centered around Star Citizen. The SSD will be Intel's first SSD for the enthusiast market, following the launch of Enterprise Optane SSDs earlier this year. Remember that these are different from the cache drives we've seen thus far and may be more valuable to the enthusiast market than what's shipped already. The Optane 900p SSDs will reportedly ship in 280GB and 480GB add-in card variants, so that would be PCIe cards, and will be advertised as, quote, optimized for Roberts Space Industries Star Citizen in the advertisement at CitizenCon. We were also told that the Z370 chipset is more of a stopgap solution for Coffee Lake for its immediate launch. Z370, as we understand it now, contains some trace optimizations for power delivery with Coffee Lake, and this is necessary to make it work well or at all. We're not really sure which of those two, but it's, from what we've been told, the trace optimizations and the power delivery optimizations were more or less needed. So that may just come down to power consumption, but that's the real reason that Coffee Lake isn't meant to be compatible with Z200 series motherboards. We learned through multiple sources that some of the earlier engineering boards did support intercompatibility between the products, but that's not something you should expect for consumer products, as has already been tested by at least one site at this point. So this was eventually disabled via firmware to ensure that Coffee Lake is on a platform that was intended for its use with those power delivery optimizations. And it sounds like Z390 should carry with it the bigger performance improvements and gains whenever that ships, but we don't know when that'll be at this point. But that follows up Z370 sometime in 2018. The next piece of news is no surprise to anyone. AMD's Zen 2 release, codenamed after artist Matisse, is scheduled for launch in 2019 on the AM4 platform. The Zen Plus optimization should ship in 2018 and will include performance optimizations. So as far as leaks go, in other words, the sky is still blue. But not like Intel though. Like the sky is literally blue. It's not an Intel thing. It's not exciting news. In other words, So yeah, Zen 2 by 2019, Zen Plus will be better. About what you would expect. The information was leaked to Informatic Zero, or Cero. So grain of salt in mind, but it seems to indicate mostly things we already knew as a community at this point. Zen Plus is noted as featuring optimizations, but not specified. So we would expect, there's a whole lot of options. You'd expect maybe something on the latency front, maybe something on the platform front, maybe something on frequency. A lot of options for AMD to improve Zen. So that's supposed to be 2018. And in APU news, Raven Ridge is rumored for 2018 with 8-thread Zen CPUs on them with 704 streaming processors that use the Vega architecture. So that would be 11 CUs from the Vega arc that we already know. Tom's Hardware Germany published a story indicating that MSI contacts had informed the outlet of no plans to support the Vega 64 release with custom cards. We emailed MSI to follow up on this, and MSI told us the following. As of right now, there's no plan we'll do custom Vega cards, but it might change in the future. So that more or less confirms what Tom's Hardware heard, and this follows a troubled launch for Vega at this point, which has routinely pushed back potential launch dates of partner cards. The cards were originally slated for late August, and then we heard early September for Asus, and then we heard mid to late September for Asus, with other board partners saying they were pushed back to October. And now Asus is pushed back to October as well. So basically, October or later at this point for AIB partner cards. In the Tom's Hardware story, Gigabyte noted that they would likely produce a custom Vega card at some point, but that they aren't 100% sure really what they're doing with it right now. So no firm commitment from from Gigabyte at this point, and no commitment from MSI. So we understand this to be largely a supply issue. Speaking with people, it sounds like the AIB partners who make the video cards for gamers are having difficulty getting their hands on enough GPUs to put on the boards to sell to their distribution and their wholesale partners. So there's no real word at this point, no update beyond the existing Tom's Hardware story of probably sometime in October for more cards to start coming out. But Asus is the only real one we've seen in the wild at this point. XFX and PowerColor are working on stuff, as are Sapphire, but all three of those companies are AMD exclusive partners, so you would expect no less from them since they need to make the card to survive. So no surprise on that front. The agnostic partners, though, seem to be a bit more variable in what they're doing. Now, as for the Asus Strix Vega 64, we sent out a tweet the other day updating everyone on our review of the card. So we are officially on a hold for that review because the Vega 64 Strix Edition card, originally Asus was, so they shipped a few samples to EU media. You probably saw some European reviews go up, and US media lagged behind. US PR was holding onto the cards basically to wait for the VBIOS to be finalized, because in those initial reviews it was not. So the results were more or less the same or slightly worse than the reference card. Now, depending on which driver version is being used, there's an incompatibility issue with the latest Asus VBIOS, the signed one, and with the 17.9.2, I think, AMD drivers. And that causes clock deficits up to 180 megahertz. So basically we're on hold until that's fixed, because otherwise the results are just going to be way worse than reference, or at least slightly worse than reference, because there's a clock regression because of incompatibility between the VBIOS and the drivers. A lot of this comes down to AMD and their decision to not allow custom BIOS at an enthusiast level, which also reflects on board partners, because now board partners have to get their BIOS more or less signed off on by AMD, and so that's causing some slowdown. But the real slowdown is supply. Asus is facing a slowdown with their VBIOS compatibility as far as reviews go, but there are other issues as well that all of these companies are facing with Vega. So the Tom's Hardware story is good. They cover a lot of it. They cover some of the engineering challenges. We'd recommend you go check it out. And that's been rewritten on their English version of the website as well. In memory news, Corsair has updated their new pair of 16GB DDR4 kits clocked at 4500 and 4600 megahertz respectively. Per the usual with memory, the 4500 MHz kit offers the tighter timings of the two and runs at a lower voltage. Alternatively, the 4600 MHz kit uses slightly more latent timings and drinks a bit more voltage to afford the boost in clocks. The 4500 MHz kit is available for $480, that's 16 gigabytes, or 4600 MHz for $550. Next, G.Skill is also rolling out new memories. They've got Trident Z RGB kits aimed specifically at Ryzen and Threadripper. The kits will come with speeds of 2400, 2933, and 3200 MHz, with capacities from 16 to 128 gigabytes. The modules feature the recognized Trident Z anodized aluminum heat spreader, replete with the RGB light bars. So you've seen these at this point, but the kits are scheduled for an October release with no current word on prices. But again, DDR4, so it'll be high. Also in memory news is Guile and what they're calling the world first, as far as being touted as the first fully RGB illuminated DDR4 memory module with ASUS ROG certification. So, I mean, generally speaking, you can be the world's first anything if you just drill down and get more and more specific on what it is. So I guess they've done that at this point. So aside from that, the sticks do offer ASUS Aura synchronized RGB support. These kits are available in both dual and quad sticks, so you can get 2 or 4 running at 3000 megahertz and offering standard XMP support with latencies of CL15 at 1.35 volts for both options. Next, for some miscellaneous news, EVGA's ePower 5 standalone VRM board is now available, or readied anyway. So this is the latest of its ePower line. These are standalone VRM boards aimed at replacing the VRMs on GPUs, and the ePower 5 has a 12 plus 2-phase design, 12 for vCore, 2 for vMem, and is powered by 3 6-pin PCIe connectors. In broad terms, EVGA's ePower VRMs are for sort of extreme overclockers, XOCers, people like BuildZoid or Kingpin, who look for increased power stability, more power available overall, more voltage options and control, and the ability to adjust voltages on the fly. This ePower board also has fan headers for cooling, which it'll probably need to some extent, and easily accessible probe points for measuring via multimeters, which is also very valuable. Pricing and availability on that still sort of up in the air, but this is not really a product that 99% of enthusiasts should be buying. Just kind of interesting to keep an eye on, though. Finally, Western Digital has a 12 terabyte WD Gold drive coming out. So this is 8 platters with helium rather than the usual mixture, and the WD Gold pack will use 8 PMR, or perpendicular magnetic recording platters, with the 4th generation, the 4th version of their HelioSeal technology, so it's sealed with helium again, and it's using 1.5 terabyte platter densities, so 1.5 for each. They spin at 7,200 RPM, 256 megabytes of cache, and it's aimed at enterprise workloads. So this is replete with other features for enterprise, like vibration reduction, various protections, security features, things like that. And it's supposed to be $540 for 12 terabytes, which isn't the worst price that we've seen for a hard drive. So, especially with SSD prices right now, comes with a 5-year warranty targeted at an enterprise overall, but something worth looking at for the future, because eventually those capacities will come down to more consumer available drives, maybe in the blue or black line from WD. So that's all for this one. As always, you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly if you like our reporting, or you can go to store.gamersnexus.net to pick up a shirt like this one. We just restocked pretty much every design and most of the sizes. And there's a couple of hats there too, because why not? So that's all. Subscribe for more. I'll see you all next time.